Hello, kiddos. This is your old Grammy Kate, um, ready to read chapter 13 of The Enormous Egg. I hope you're enjoying it, and I'm hoping you're all well and having a good time. Dr. Zemer's apartment was on 12th Street, just half a mile or so from the museum. At first, it seemed very strange to hear all the cars going past the window all night long. I guess in a city there's always somebody awake, no matter how late it is. You don't notice the noise in the daytime, but when you lie in bed in the dark, all those traffic sounds come in the window, and the glow of the lights goes back and forth on the ceiling. It used to keep me awake at first, but after a while I got used to it. My first job every day was to take Uncle Beasley for a walk. Now that we were keeping him shut up in a room in the museum, Dr. Zemer said it was especially important to see that he got some exercise and fresh air every day. We could do that outdoors until cold weather came, and then we'd have to exercise him indoors after that. But of course, it wouldn't do to stroll around the city streets with that dinosaur in the daytime. Dr. Zemer said the people in Washington weren't too accustomed to live dinosaur, and there might be all kinds of crowds and confusion, and we might get into trouble with the police. Besides, Dr. Kennedy wanted to keep Uncle Beasley out of sight as much as we could. He didn't want a whole lot of people piling into the museum and getting in the way. The way I look at it, Dr. Kennedy kept saying, is that we've got to protect this animal from the public. If the public gets to know we've got a live dinosaur here, they'd be swarming all over the place, endangering his health and getting in our way all the time. And the public wouldn't have any scientific interest in the dinosaur. They would just come and gawk at him. You hear that? There's some dogs arguing outside. Ooh. That did not sound happy. They're little dogs. Okay, can we read while they're barking? I think it will pass quickly. They would just come and gawk at him. That's why I haven't told the newspaper what we've got here. We might as well keep this thing quiet until we've had a chance to study the dinosaur for a while. I haven't even told the police about it yet. Well, we decided that the best time to exercise Uncle Beasley was early in the morning, before people were out on the streets. So every morning I would get out of bed at about 5 o'clock while it was still pretty dark outside. Then I'd get dressed and eat some breakfast and walk over to the museum. It's pretty nice in a city early in the morning like that, when there's hardly anybody around and the streets are all just quiet and empty. I would walk down 12th Street and across Pennsylvania Avenue and then across Constitution Avenue, and there I'd be at the National Museum. I would go in the back door and tell the night watchman that I was going to take the dinosaur out. The night watchman, and he would hold the door open for us as we went out. He used to stand behind the door, too, because he never did like to get too close to Uncle Beasley. I don't see how you dare go around with that big fellow, he told me. He could make mincemeat out of you in no time. Oh, he's pretty tame, I said. He wouldn't hurt anything unless he got excited. He knows me pretty well. You see, I've taken care of him ever since he was hatched. We'd usually walk for half an hour or so on the mall, which is what they call the big open space with all the grass in between the Capitol and the Washington Monument. Usually there wouldn't be anybody else there except perhaps a man way off walking his dog down near General Grant's statue, or now and then a milk truck going by. When we'd been out long enough, I'd take Uncle Beasley back into the museum and have him all safely back in his room before most people were out on the streets. When Dr. Zemer arrived at the museum in the morning, he would give me some scientific thing to find out about, like the life cycle of the butterfly or the foundation of coral, and how the glaciers covered North America. And then I would hunt around in the museum and find an exhibit about it and study it pretty carefully. And he wasn't in a big hurry. Then I would go back to Dr. Zemer and tell him what I found out. After that, I would go to the office of the museum superintendent, and he would give me some of the museum accounts to figure out. And when I had done some of them, the secretary used to let me work them out on the adding machine to see if my answers were right. I really learned a lot in the museum, and it was more fun than school. Sometimes when Dr. Zemer had some free time, he would take me to places like the Archives building or the Supreme Court. And after I got to know my way around a little, I went to a lot of places by myself. The place I liked best was the Jefferson Memorial. It's a big round building right beside a kind of bay they call the Tidal Basin, and it's all made of white marble. I think they said that the marble came from from Vermont, but I liked it anyway. Inside there's a statue of Thomas Jefferson, and one of his sayings is carved around the inside of the dome. I can't remember the exact words, but the general idea was that he didn't think much of making up other people's minds for them. Dr. Zemer said he liked that building best too. Well, things went along like that for about 2 weeks, and Uncle Beasley was growing all the time. We tried out different kinds of feed on him because it was too hard to get fresh grass, and we finally decided on alfalfa. And with about 50 pounds of poultry mash for dessert, he used to eat up about 4 bags of alfalfa a day, along with about 10 gallons of water. I never saw such an appetite. By September 25th, he measured 15 feet and weighed 2,674 pounds. His upper horns were almost as long as my arm, and the lower horn on his nose was about half as long. His head was about 3 feet long, and the bone collar had grown up over the back of his neck and shoulders. He was terribly strong. We had given up using the leather collar and the cow chain, because we couldn't find a collar big enough for his neck, and besides, we could easily break the chain if he wanted to. Instead of that, I used to tie a piece of rope around his left upper horn and let him stay that way. If he ever had really wanted to go somewhere else when I was leading him, I couldn't have done a thing about it. Dr. Zemer said the dinosaurs, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to stop there for a moment because, as you know, if I read too long, I start to fall asleep, and that's not good for reading to kids. I'll see you in a little bit.